Good morning and welcome to Economic Outlook 2021 from this amazing community asset that is the Calgary Film Centre. My name is Erin O'Connor and I'm the Business Development Manager standing here in Studio 1 where some of the world's most cinematic moments have come to life. Very soon you will see the amazing set that was constructed here for Ghostbusters Afterlife and also the upcoming feature Let Him Go. We've had many series filmed here, from Fargo to Tin Star to that awesome science fiction series Winona Earp. And yes, Alberta Wolves did make it to the international screen in that epic Game of Thrones, and it's no wonder why. The Calgary Film Centre is 50,000 square feet of purpose-built sound stages and 35,000 square feet of warehouse space, which provides year-round screen production support with all of the extras: clear span, abundant power, laser-smooth floors, a highly advanced air exchange, and more. Alberta has some of the best and most diverse outdoor locations in the world, not to mention our amazing light that all directors drool over. And to top it off, we have the world's best equipment and service provider, William F. White, right here on site, providing the technical support needed to make all of that amazing Academy and Emmy Award-winning content. This event is coming to you from the Calgary Film Centre on the traditional lands of the Treaty 7 Plains First Nations. To build respectful relationships, land acknowledgement is an important part of reconciliation. It honors the authentic history of North America and its original people and tells the story of the creation of our country. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Tsuut'ina Nation, and Métis Region 3. It is now my honor to introduce Kelly Good Eagle for the traditional blessing.
Uke ne tukaweks, natana kawassapita, studamakopamo siksika, taxanos spumo saks yessapi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelly Good Eagle Sr. I come from the Blackfoot Siksika Nation tribe here in Alberta. I'll be doing a small prayer today and a prayer song for you today. Uke napi natus, tagadansa spumukinan, uke spumuk suksi matapix, uksipukeks. Uksi nestis to mix. Tagadanas pap uksi ko kapsi kiranas pak kaksamukinan, ukis pumukinan. Ukidaganas po uksi itskinaix, motukix, kinatsumitek, samaistud. Ukinapinatus pumusna nipitam the cooksanan, issacooksanan. Ukidanasa na ninainama, pukaki, natokutuk, tagadanas pa spumukinan, some kutpinan, so kapi. Ukianaya. In 1980, I was given the right to wear my headdress, and at that time, I was gifted a prayer song. And I've been working for Alberta Health Services since 2009, and I utilize that song wherever I go. So what this song represents, the grandmothers and grandfathers will come in, they'll dance around, they'll look at you guys, and then they'll take all their prayers, and we'll bless you in that way today. Yeah, 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 hey, oh, yeah. Natus, Ukina, Spade to be up Daganasas Pumukinan, Ukisamisakat Chipui, Uksamisuk Yasapi, Ukin the Stornokasapit, Hande. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Aaron, and thank you as well to Elder Kelly Good Eagle. My name is Tara Nelson, and I am the 6 o'clock anchor and executive editor of CTV Calgary, and I'm so pleased to be here with you once again for Economic Outlook. The fact that we are here in this studio today at the Calgary Film Centre and not downtown as we usually are with 1,500 other people really just, it hits it home once again of just how different this year has been for all of us. Economic Outlook 2021, presented by ATB Financial, is Calgary Economic Development's signature event of the year. But this year, of course, the health protocols that we have in place for COVID-19 mean that we simply can't meet in person. However, the insight and the perspectives that we'll hear are more important than ever. I can tell you even from my own perspective at CTV Calgary, with our viewership that we are seeing over the last 7 months, COVID-19 and the economic downturn are at the top of mind for so many Calgarians. People are thirsting for information in an uncertain time. They're engaged in a conversation about our economic future, and we want to add to that discussion today. We hope that you'll join the conversation with us on social media by using the hashtag Outlook2021. Now, we will keep the format essentially the same as we always do in recent years. We are very fortunate to have Pierre, the Chief Economist for Business Development Canada. He will be joining us from Montreal, and we will have Todd Hirsch, Chief Economist with ATB Financial, here with us in studio. We will also hear from Doug Schweitzer, Alberta's new Minister of Jobs, Economy and Innovation, and of course, Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. They will both share their economic priorities. And Mary Moran, President and Chief Executive Officer for Economic Development Calgary, will discuss digital transformation and the paradigm shift in our economy. Now, events like Economic Outlook couldn't happen without some pretty terrific sponsors like Postmedia, FMAV, Contemporary Office Interiors, and our presenting sponsor today, a longtime Team Calgary member, ATB Financial. Calgary Economic Development relies on the support of its more than 70 Team Calgary corporate partners to do work on behalf of Calgarians. And all proceeds from today's event are going to the Calgary chapter of the Canadian Mental Health Association and the Calgary Food Bank. So let's begin the afternoon with Curtis Stang, President and CEO of ATB Financial.
Thank you, Tara. Hello and welcome to today's Economic Outlook. Typically, we have about 1,500 of this province's top business, government, and community leaders all in a room, and you can just feel the energy all around you. This event will be a bit different, but nonetheless important. Perhaps this year, these conversations are even more critical. We're in a unique position as a province, a new frontier as I like to call it. Along with every other jurisdiction around the globe, we're dealing with the impacts from COVID-19. But unique to Alberta, we're also dealing with the collapse in oil prices and resulting market volatility. Just 7 months ago, we were seeing much needed signs of a recovering economy and feeling hopeful about the coming quarters. Then what feels like overnight, uncharted waters and a completely new frontier. Along with these unique challenges we have in front of us as a province, we're also uniquely positioned for our recovery. As a province, our value proposition is more than strong enough to compete within our borders and well beyond. We know that we're home to the world's top talent. Some of the most educated, healthy, and hardworking people on the planet call Alberta home. We're also known for our tremendous wealth of resources, our market access, and the low cost of doing business. Our energy sector is impressive with its long-standing focus on safety, sustainability, and responsible development. We are world leaders here and need to proudly tell our story. So too with our agriculture industry. We provide food to the world, and we do it in an extremely innovative and forward-looking way. Our agriculture practices are some of the best in the world. And I could go on to describe many other leading industries in Alberta, and yet we need to do more. The trends around us are undeniable. The rapid pace of technology, the growing use of AI, changing expectations of consumers and businesses for more seamless partnerships, this fourth industrial revolution is upon us. We need to take action. And this is where our leadership needs to lean in. This is where we all need to lean in. How do we ensure Alberta remains in the driver's seat of our destiny? How do we come together in ways we have yet to imagine so that we get off our heels and back onto our toes and thrive as a province. I believe we leverage our value proposition as a province and lean into technology and innovation. We become a smart destination, smart cities, smart health, smart education, smart agriculture, smart energy. So what exactly does this mean? It means we become the destination for embracing the new digital economy. We reskill our workforce, we attract the world's best talent, and we create an environment where Alberta is known for solving the problems of the future. The outcomes will be enormously positive for all industries and for all Albertans. I encourage you to reflect following today's event and think about the important role you play in Alberta. We are relying on it. And finally, thanks to the team at Calgary Economic Development for choosing the CMHA Calgary and Food Bank as recipients of today's event proceeds. This is a challenging time for all of us. If you are struggling, please put your pride aside and ask for help. And if you have the means, please donate to your local food bank. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Curtis. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the newly appointed Minister of Jobs, Economy and Innovation, the MLA for Calgary Elbow, Doug Schweitzer.
Well, thank you, Calgary Economic Development, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you here today. This is such an exciting time to be in Alberta. Even though we're in this pandemic, when I've taken on this job as the Minister of Jobs, Economy and Innovation, it's just over 7 weeks ago now. This is the best file in government, because when you go out there and you talk to Albertans about what the future of this province holds, we're just beginning to scratch the surface. We have such a strong foundation in Alberta, from energy to agriculture to forestry. We have such a traditional, strong economy here in our province that has gotten us to this point, in our time. And you know what? I'm just taking a look at what we can become. What can Alberta go to? Where can we be as a province many years from now? And the future is bright for Alberta. We have so many different opportunities here in our province to take a look at for how we can grow together. And as we move forward out of this pandemic, what are the opportunities for our province to lead in this country from how we have a strong economy? And one of the words that comes up, I remember this coming up in one of my first interviews, was the topic of diversification, the D word, as they say. And you know what? Why not? Why aren't we talking about diversification? People always like to compare Alberta to Texas. We always have that, you're the Texas of the North. And you know what Texas has going for it right now? They're one of the most diversified economies in the entire United States. From health and life sciences to technology and innovation, renewable power, renewable energy. Texas is at the forefront. They still have one of the strongest agricultural economies. They still have one of the strongest energy economies as well, like we have. But they have been purposeful in their intent for the last 2 decades in getting to where they are. And it's time for us in Alberta to take that same purpose and intention. It's not an either or, it's about an and. How much can we add on to our economy? How can we continue to have that leading entrepreneurial spirit here in our province of Alberta to continue to lead for not just this generation, but for generations ahead? So when I take a look at our recovery plan, this is an opportunity for us to kind of rethink where we are in our Alberta. What are the opportunities ahead for us? And when we're taking a look at, how do we build on the strong foundation that we have? Our post-secondary institutions are some of the leading ones around. We are at the forefront of AI and machine learning here in Alberta, and most people don't even know about it because we tend to only talk about certain industries. Well, we could talk about so much more and what that foundation is to build on. And when we take a look at it, technology and innovation is the foundation of every company. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, how you order your coffee, how you order your groceries, logistical information, how you get around. Everything is based off of the foundation of innovation and technology. And we have the beginning of the emergence of that ecosystem, particularly here in the city of Calgary, that's just starting to take off. So how do we help them grow? How do we help them get to that next unicorn? How do we get that next billion-dollar company here in the province of Alberta? And there's many of them that a lot of people are just starting to hear about. From Atobotics to Benevity, we have that ability to grow here in the province of Alberta. That's one of the reasons why we put $175 million into the Alberta Enterprise Corporation to continue to foster that venture capital here in Alberta. We also brought in the Innovation Employment Grant. That, again, is there to help drive that research and development for those high-growth startup companies right here in Alberta. That's really important for us to make sure we get that right. We also launched an intellectual property review to make sure that we have intellectual property rules here and frameworks here at our post-secondary institutions, as well as from a legal standpoint, to make sure that we can commercialize commercialize all of that research and development right here in the province of Alberta, be at the forefront of these issues. Many people seem to think Alberta's behind, but this is an opportunity for us to get at the forefront and lead in many areas. We also put in place $10 billion into infrastructure. So if you're seeing a lot of construction in the city right now, a lot of that has to deal with the fact that we're putting in more and more money into infrastructure across this province, accelerated projects to help get people back to work as well. So that's really important for us to make sure that we can take care of people, invest in that critical infrastructure, not only for today, but also for the future. You would have seen an $800 million investment into agricultural infrastructure, irrigation in the province of Alberta. This is to help free up 200,000 acres of irrigated land here in the province. That's a game changer in rural Alberta. That's a game changer, an opportunity for us, though, here in the city of Calgary to help get at the forefront of agricultural technology. We've been having numerous discussions, even from companies and platforms in Silicon Valley that want to come to Alberta now because they see some of the opportunities here from an agricultural perspective for how we can grow and be at the forefront of technology and innovation in that space. And that could be right here in the city of Calgary too. Those are high-paying jobs, high-value jobs, innovative jobs that we need to be at the forefront of. And we're looking forward to making more announcements soon in that area. As well, when you take a look at where we've come from and where we are going when it comes to the competitiveness of Alberta, we also accelerated our job creation tax cut. Now in Alberta, you have the lowest corporate taxes by far in the country. And we've done that purposely to make sure that Alberta companies know we want you to grow and thrive in our province. We want to break down any barriers that you have. We're doing red tape reduction initiatives as well to make sure that we're at the forefront of growth and opportunities here so that you have lower barriers in the province of Alberta. That doesn't mean that we're going to have lower standards. We're going to hold people still to the highest standards in many different areas, but it doesn't mean that we can't be more efficient in how we deliver it. We also want to make sure we can attract investment into the province. So we've established Invest Alberta. It's a new approach for us in how we engage with the private sector to attract more investment into our province. But historically, we had trade offices set up around the world, and we tried to think that government could source transactions and source deals. But meanwhile, here in Alberta, we have so many different platforms, from accounting firms to financial institutions, law firms, that already have immense reach at the national and international level. We want to support your services. We want to support you in closing that next transaction, support you in closing that next deal, getting that next investment into Alberta. How can we support you in getting that done? So that's what Invest Alberta is there to do. Is there to support you in your success. We want you to close transactions. We want you to close investments. That way you're successful and we get Albertans back to work in our province. As well, many of you would have seen our natural gas, plastics, hydrogen announcement that we made earlier this month as well. Alberta has an opportunity to be at the forefront of all of these different areas, from petrochemicals to clean energy when it comes to hydrogen, when it comes as well to LNG projects. We also have our recycling strategy where we want to put Alberta at the forefront of the cycle of recycling when it comes to that. It's an area as well of huge amount of growth potential for us as a province. It's an opportunity for us to lead in this narrative as well across the country. Everybody talks about ESG, various clean energy initiatives, and Alberta is at the forefront of this discussion, and we need to make sure that we're delivering policy like this initiative to demonstrate to the rest of the world that Alberta is a leader in this area. We have TIER when it comes to this. We've been at the forefront for over a decade in this space to make sure that the world knows that Alberta is the place to innovate. This is the place where we're going to solve the problems of the world. I mean, when you talk about this really buzzword right now is around hydrogen. And when you think about any jurisdiction in the world that can solve hydrogen, it's Alberta. Take a look at what we unlocked with the oil sands, SAGD, carbon capture. A lot of those technologies that are world-leading technologies all happen right here in our province. So when people talk about opportunities ahead and how excited I actually am for the future of Alberta is because we have that intellectual capital. We have that reputation of being able to innovate and grow and find solutions when most people thought they were never even possible. That is the future of Alberta. That is what the opportunity lies ahead for all of us to work together on to make sure that you are as equally excited as we are about the path forward and ahead for our province. Many people know that we're in a tight spot when it comes to the province's finances, but you know what? We have huge amounts of opportunities to grow. The only way out of this for our province is to innovate and grow together and have that path forward. And in this government, with our recovery plan, you have a government that's willing to move faster than any other government in Canada. We want you to be successful. We want you to go tell all your clients, tell your investors, tell the financial world around the world that Alberta is open for business. We want you to be successful. We want you to grow, and we have brighter days ahead for us here in Calgary and across this province. So thank you to everybody for being a part of this conference. Really appreciate all the initiatives. Reach out to us anytime if you have ideas or suggestions, and thank you to Calgary Economic Development for giving me the opportunity to speak here today.
And thank you to Minister Schweitzer. We appreciate that. You know, it's possible, it's probable even, that for many of you watching today, life really has slowed down in the last 7 months, but that's not all bad. It also gives us an opportunity to take a breath and maybe get a new perspective of the world around us. Maybe you're even looking at Calgary with fresh eyes. Calgary Economic Development certainly is. You're about to hear from Mary Moran in a moment, who is the President and CEO for Calgary Economic Development. But first, take a look at this, because this is Calgary.
I know a place that's as tough as it is compassionate, a place with an unwavering work ethic and immeasurable heart. Qualities woven into the fabric of this city and its people. You see it in the day-to-day moments and the moments it's needed most. This place is Calgary, Alberta, a future-proof city, diverse in culture and diverse in economy. You might know it for its oil, farming, the Red Mile, or the greatest outdoor show on earth. But you'd only be scratching the surface. Calgary is a whole lot more. Anything is possible here. See, if you've got a dream and you're willing to do the work, Calgary has your back. The proof is in the people, the entrepreneurs that built this city, the innovators, risk takers, and artists. The proof is in the work they've done and keep on doing. It's in the culture they've created that keeps on inspiring. It's in the tech, energy, and life sciences sectors where cutting-edge, industry-disrupting work is being done every day. The proof is in our small businesses, a lot of them not so small anymore. This is the most livable city in all of North America, and one of the most livable cities on the planet. 5th actually, but who's counting? So what's that mean? It means clocking out at 5 and being in the mountains for 6. It's a short commute that's easy or fun or breathtaking. Calgary is a city with a proud heritage and a limitless future. It's the city of choice for the world's best entrepreneurs. And if you want to be a part of all this, part of something big, something special, that time is right now, and we'd be happy to have you. Be part of the energy.
Thanks so much, Tara. It's great to be here with you today. And these are certainly unprecedented times, and it's evident in the fact that we are hosting our annual Economic Outlook virtually for the first time. I look forward to the time when we are able to get together again face-to-face, all 1,200 of you that are participating on today's call. But until then, the show must go on, and so we adapt. On behalf of everyone at Calgary Economic Development, including our board chair, Joe Naheed, and Patty McLeod, our board chair for the Calgary Film Centre, welcome to our 2021 Economic Outlook. I'd also like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our presenting sponsor, ATB Financial, as well as Postmedia, FM, AV, and Contemporary Office Interiors for supporting today's event. The work we do at Calgary Economic Development would not be possible without the generous and unwavering support of our numerous Team Calgary corporate partners. 2020 has taken an enormous toll on people across Canada and especially right here in Calgary. And our hearts certainly go out to everyone who is experiencing personal tragedy from COVID-19. We are immensely grateful for the healthcare and the frontline workers who have been relentlessly trying to keep people safe. I also want to acknowledge the families who are trying to make ends meet, the small business owners working day and night to keep the doors open, and companies of any size that are continuing to struggle. And finally, I want to recognize our political leaders, some of whom are with us here today, for their tireless work on behalf of the country, our province, and our city. Now, in addition to the global health crisis, we're facing 3 distinct challenges in Calgary. First, the ongoing restructuring of the oil and gas industry. Secondly, a devastating oil price war earlier this year that caused a glut of supply and record low pricing. And the economic impact COVID has had on weakening demand across a number of our key sectors, from energy to manufacturing to retail, travel, and hospitality. The impact on Calgary has been staggering, and you'll hear about this from our 2 economists today. From unemployment to GDP to office space vacancy, they all set records this year, and none were positive. Our challenges were large and complex before COVID, and now they're even more complex. In addition to high unemployment, office space is a glaring example of a large and complex issue. Calgary has significantly more office space on a per capita basis than any other city in North America. Twice as much as Toronto, 3 times as much as cities like Pittsburgh, Denver, Edmonton, and 4 times as much as cities like Detroit and Austin. Our office towers were built on a forecast and a strategy of $100 oil, and that's not our reality. Today, we have almost 13 million square feet of available office space in downtown Calgary. And that office space could accommodate another 130,000 people in downtown Calgary. And there is no instant coffee or silver bullet solution. Our complex challenges have forced us to shift our way of thinking. In economic development and in all aspects of our lives, if we want to figure out these large, complex problems, it means not getting too focused on one specific thing. It's seeing the big picture, the other long-term opportunities. A friend of mine shared a story with me recently that was about a professor who gave her students an impromptu test. And the students were handed a piece of paper. And when they flipped it over, there was a black dot on it. And they were asked to describe what they saw. And the teacher read all of their answers out. They all wrote about the dot, its location, its color, its shape, its size. Not one person wrote about the expansive white space. They couldn't see the big picture, the other long-term opportunities, because they were all focused on one specific thing. And in Alberta, that black dot is our defense strategy to optimize our energy industry, which is undeniably important, not just to Calgary or Alberta, but to Canada. And we certainly applaud the government of Alberta for their tireless work in this area. But in order for us to create new jobs and fill that office space, we also need an offense strategy. We need to pay attention to the white space, the other longer-term opportunities. And at Calgary Economic Development, we're highly focused on the white space. Now, our world has been turned upside down over the last 7 months. What we're experiencing is more than the run-of-the-mill recession or restructuring of the industry or even a global pandemic. There's a paradigm shift underway. The world is transforming at a scale and a speed never seen before. And our accepted assumptions are being challenged on everything from the economy to the way we work to social justice. And at the same time, we are pushing the limits of technology and innovation beyond what was even possible just a few years ago. The white space of today is the opportunity for digital transformation. There are 25 billion connected mobile devices in this world today, and the number is expected to double in the coming years. And you'll hear from Todd and Pierre today that the recovery from COVID will be digital. Recent studies show that the adoption rate for digital technology has accelerated more quickly this year than it has in the previous 2 decades. And the impact is on all sectors is absolutely remarkable. But the impact on our industrial sectors is truly profound. And we're seeing it all across Alberta. Calgary Economic Development commissioned a study last year that forecasted Calgary companies would lead an $18.4 billion investment in digital transformation across all of our sectors across Alberta by the end of 2022. Now let that sink in for just a moment. $18.4 billion of investment. Try to think of another investment of that size anywhere in this city, this province, or even in this country. Digital transformation isn't waiting for anyone. It's happening globally, and it's happening here. And in Calgary, we are already on the road to a digital economy. The companies across our key sectors that embrace digital transformation will be the disruptors in this rapidly changing world, not the disrupted. It allows companies and industries to be more predictive, more productive, and more competitive. And there is absolutely no turning back. Now, as a city, we're quite fortunate. We have a vision that was ahead of its time. 2 years ago, our community set a foundation for digital transformation in the economic strategy called Calgary in the New Economy. We worked with Boston Consulting Group, a number of CEOs across a number of sectors, and engaged hundreds of Calgarians to create a strategy that was built by the community for the community. And as we heard from Minister Schweitzer, the Alberta government's recovery plan is a blueprint of Calgary in the new economy. It's bold, it aligns with our key sectors, and it aligns with our innovation and technology agenda. Today, Calgary in the new economy is more relevant than it ever has been, and it is our path forward. The vision for Calgary in the new economy is for Calgary to be the city of choice for the brightest people to come here and stay here and embrace advanced technologies and solve some of the biggest challenges in the world. Cleaner energy, safe and more secure food, more efficient transportation of people and goods, and increasingly so, better health solutions. And all of these sectors have been severely tested during COVID and see digitization being a key part of their future. Calgary Economic Development's work is more important today than it has been at any point in our 20-year history. And we are certainly grateful and fortunate that City Council took a bold step to help attract companies and expand our innovation ecosystems with the initiative Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. This is an absolutely critical tool for us to implement Calgary in the new economy. And almost $40 million has been awarded to 12 organizations to date, which has led to almost $300 million in overall investment in Calgary. Now, most of these have been awarded to local companies, but we've also used the fund to attract new companies to build out our ecosystem here. Calgary and Alberta will always be a global energy center. From oil and gas to solar and wind to new opportunities in geothermal, petrochemicals, and hydrogen, we are absolutely blessed with an abundance of resources. We are also one of the top centers for clean tech globally, and we are leading the way in delivering lower carbon energy to the world. And the growth in our other sectors is equally important and equally impressive. We're seeing strong momentum with adoption of digital technologies in everything from agribusiness to life sciences to fintech to aerospace logistics and creative industries. Now, if we want these sectors and these companies to continue to grow and be globally competitive, access to talent is going to be key. Last year alone, there was a 27% increase in tech jobs in Calgary, and we are struggling to keep pace with the demand of these types of jobs. This is why transition to tech programs like Edge Up are vital to displaced energy workers looking for jobs in tech. But we also need the younger generations to stay here and take those tech jobs. And that's why it's so encouraging to see the number of tech training seats at the post-secondary institutions in Calgary almost double in recent years. There are few better examples of being a disruptor than Calgary's David Bissett. He had the foresight to donate $30 million to SAIT to launch the School of Advanced Digital Technology. Now, this $30 million is the biggest donation of its kind outside of healthcare to any post-secondary anywhere in Canada. Since then, we leveraged the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund to support SAIT's new downtown digital talent hub. It will expand our talent pipeline and get more Calgarians the skills for the jobs in tech across all of our sectors. It's a really smart investment. With $18.4 billion of investment in digital technologies expected in this province, we're going to need about 77,000 tech workers across Alberta by 2023. Now, anybody in this ecosystem knows that capital will follow smart people with great ideas. And the tech investment community is starting to pay attention to what's going on here in Calgary. We saw record levels of venture capital come into the Calgary market last year, and in 2020, the flow of capital has already surpassed that of 2019, despite all of our challenges. Year to date, we've attracted more than $200 million of venture capital. And on a per capita basis, we're on our way to being in the upper echelon of venture capital markets in Canada. This gives us a strong foundation, something to build upon. And we're seeing the impact in the dozens of incubators and accelerators, from CDL Rockies to Harvest Builders to Platform, that have opened across the city to support our local entrepreneurs. We know that tech will be one of the big job creators of the future because we're seeing it happen right now. Every year, more and more of our companies are doing very cool things in artificial intelligence and machine learning, AR, VR, robotics, autonomous systems, and more advanced technologies and softwares. This is the intersection where advanced technology meets and improves traditional industries. And we expect a tech boom in Calgary in the coming years, with the number of tech companies at least doubling by 2030. And all of those companies, the tech startups, the established businesses plotting their digital roadmaps, and the new companies that we're trying to attract, will all need tech talent. Now let's go back to the black dot on the white page. We all want Calgary to strengthen its position as a global energy center, but if we're going to fill that office space and create jobs for the future, then we have to look at longer case opportunities, the white space. And as I've said for the last several years, the road to economic recovery will be long and bumpy for Calgary. There is no doubt that our city will look different in the future. But there's also no denying that we remain well positioned to grow and evolve and to be the city of choice in Canada to solve the world's biggest challenges. We have an enviable lifestyle, we have a low corporate tax environment, we have an abundance of affordable office space for any type of business or size of business. And most importantly, we have really smart people who have always shown a remarkable ability to take on unexpected challenges and adapt to the new realities. The bottom line is, it will be Calgarians embracing the opportunities that make the difference. We are, and we always will be, a city of problem solvers. We definitely have what it takes. And this is indeed an opportunity-rich city. Not someday, but today. Thank you so much for your time today. And as always, on behalf of all of Calgary Economic Development, it's an honor to serve our community during these complex but very exciting times. Enjoy the rest of Economic Outlook. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I'd love to follow up with just a couple of quick questions, because I think you're absolutely right. As difficult a year as this has been, there are still a lot of exciting things happening in our city. So let's start with adjusting. You talked about adjusting to the new realities of the current economy. So what specifically is Calgary Economic Development doing to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think our focus on Calgary and the new economy, and for getting alignment of orders of government to ensure that we're all focused on the opportunities for growth while we defend our energy industry and frankly become the clean tech energy center for the world, is really, really important. But you know, you can imagine during this COVID period of time that foreign direct investment coming into the community has decreased in every single market. So, you know, we're focusing here with local companies and helping them grow and expand. And a lot of them are tech companies, from, you know, Google to IBM to Microsoft, all companies that are serving our industrial sectors. And of course, then our final focus is going to be around talent. And that is going to be key, as I mentioned in the address. It will be really key for our future growth.
So let's talk a little bit about talent. Maybe you can expand on what Calgary Economic Development is doing to meet the needs of employers, but also helping Calgarians find work.
Yeah, I think helping Calgarians is our #1 priority. In fact, you know, we have such great people here, highly educated, young, global perspective, that want to stay here. And so the likelihood of them going back to the energy industry directly is not great. And so we have to look for opportunities. So programs that are helping retraining, whether it be Edge Up which is about energy to digital education, programs like NPower, programs like Lighthouse Labs, the numerous programs that are about micro-credentialing in technology, and even programs like AltaML are running specifically around AI and machine learning, are all going to help those highly educated people transition into digital technologies, because they know where, when, and why we use the data, and now it's just about how you do it with mobile devices.
I think it really is interesting though, like, even if you just look at SAIT, the SAIT of 30 years ago is not the SAIT of today.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I think they've always been helping industry with technology,
Yes.
and this is such a, such a quantum leap forward for us. The digital school and particularly the downtown digital talent hub are really going to be transformational in helping companies and people transition into that. But, it is also really important to acknowledge that we need to keep the young people. And, I know the Alberta government is working on a program called Alberta 2030, which is looking at how we teach and how we make people work ready when they graduate through programs like work integrated learning, et cetera, and micro-credentialing. And that's really, really important work, because we have seen an exodus of people, particularly 24 to 29 or 30 years old, that aren't coming back the way they used to once they got their education in it. So it's really important that we try to retain those people and bring them back. But the reality is that we're also going to have to attract people. And with immigration issues in the US, there's lots of companies and people that are interested in Calgary that bring the senior tech skills that we're looking for, that can help us teach some of the people that are, have been displaced out of the energy industry but yet want to work in tech. So we're looking at kind of a three-pronged strategy: transition, retention, as well as attraction of people that we need to help address or deliver on Calgary and the new economy.
Okay, excellent. Mary, thank you. Thank
Thank
you for being
very
here today.
much.
Well, in a changing economic environment, of course, you need to understand the risks and you need to understand the opportunities. That is our next speaker's specialty. Pierre Cléroux is Vice President Research and Chief Economist for Business Development Canada in Montreal. But first, let's just take a quick peek at Calgary's burgeoning fintech industry.
Calgary, a city with the highest concentration of headquarters per capita in the country. Huge deals get made and money really moves. The residual effect here is limitless opportunities in fintech. These companies are succeeding across the entire spectrum: crypto, security, blockchain, trading, crowdsourcing. Calgary-based companies are on the rise thanks to talented people and Alberta's fierce appetite for fintech. Calgary is where your great ideas become billion-dollar business. Be part of the energy.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here today for this virtual economic outlook. My presentation has three parts. First, I'm going to talk about where we are in terms of the recovery in Canada. Second, what should we expect in the next 12 months? And the third part is about how the pandemic has changed technology in Canada. The level of adoption of technology has just accelerated. I'm going to talk about that in the last part of the presentation. So first, let's talk about the economy. The world economy is in recession. The contraction this year is going to be more than 4%. We expect a rebound in 2021. So by the end of 2021, we should be back to the pre-crisis level. However, COVID-19 is having a huge impact on all economies around the world. As you can see from this graph, China is going to have a positive growth, but much lower than what we have seen over the last few years. But the United States, Germany, Japan, Canada, all these countries are going to have negative growth around 5%. Other European countries might have even more difficult growth around 10%. When we have a slowdown in the world economy, this is having an impact on commodity prices. And this is the case for oil price. As you can see from this graph, during the lockdown, the price really went down very seriously. But as the world economy reopened, the price came back. We are still below the equilibrium we had in February. And the reason for that is the world demand for oil is still 10% down. So it's going to take some time before we go back to a balanced market in terms of the oil price. So what is the situation in Canada? This is how we see the current situation. We see it in three phases. The first one was the lockdown, and this is behind us when the economy was closed. The second phase is what we call the initial recovery. So this is when businesses are reopening and they are hiring people. And we are at the end of this phase. And finally, the last phase is when you go back to the pre-crisis level or to the normal situation. In the next few slides, I'm going to talk about phase 2 and phase 3. So this is where we are today. We are at 94% of the level of economic activities that we had in February. So after the lockdown, actually the economy rebounded pretty quickly. In terms of jobs, the Canadian economy lost 3 million jobs, but we have recuperated 76% of these jobs so far. So the initial recovery in Canada has been quite strong, stronger than expected in March, and also stronger than other developed economies like the United States. So what's ahead? What should we expect the economy in the next 12 months? We're going to be in the last phase of the recovery, and we believe that growth is going to be at a slower pace for 4 reasons. The first one is the pandemic is not over yet. The graph that you see is the number of new cases per million in Canada. As you can see from the graph, after a quiet summer, when school restarted in September, the number of cases in Canada has been increasing. The good news, if you look at the end of this line, you can see that the situation has improved over the last 7 days. This is critical. This will have a huge impact on the final recovery. If we are able to control the second wave of the virus, the recovery is going to be faster. Second reason why we believe the recovery is going to take a bit more time is because consumers are still very cautious about their money. They are not spending as much as they can just because they are not so confident about the economy. The third reason is on the business side. Business investment are important in any economy. They represent in Canada 20% of the economy. And we keep track of business intention every quarter. As you can see from the graph, now business investment are down, and we expect less investment this year than last year. It's going to take some time before businesses have the capacity and also the confidence to reinvest in their business. The fourth reason why we expect a slower growth in the next 12 months is because some sectors are going to take more time to rebound. The graph that you see is our forecast by sector. At the top of the graph on the right side, you see the sectors that are performing the best, the ones who are recovering the fastest. ICT, pharma, even retail are back to the pre-crisis level. But in the yellow zone, all the sectors are going to take a bit more time. That's the case of oil and gas, some part of manufacturing like aerospace, and also the automotive sector, and of course everything related to tourism. So that's the fourth reason why we believe the rest of the recovery is going to take a bit more time. So this is our forecast. Today we are at the end of the initial recovery, which has been strong, stronger than what we expected at the beginning. But we still have some way to go before we go back to the pre-crisis level. We have 2 scenarios. The first one is an optimistic scenario. If everything goes well with the second wave, we don't have to go back into a lockdown. We believe the Canadian economy is going to go back to the pre-crisis level at the beginning of 2022. If we have a strong second wave, this will delay the recovery, and we might have to wait until 2023. So far, we believe that we're doing well. The initial recovery has been strong, and we believe that Canadian economy is going to go back to the pre-crisis level in about 12 or 18 months. But something really happened in the last 6 months. The pandemic has changed our business environment, and one key factor is the adoption of technology. Both consumers and businesses are investing or are interested in technology, and the pandemic has really accelerated these trends. On the consumer side, consumers, they want to buy more online than any time before. 32% of Canadians are saying they're going to buy more online in the next 12 to 18 months. When revenues are increasing, this ratio is actually higher than for the average Canadian. And the reason is many Canadians have engaged in economic activities online for the first time during the pandemic. And 82% of them want to continue to do that at the end of this crisis. They got used to it. They also saw the benefits of it. So of course, the online business is not a new trend. But the pandemic has accelerated this trend. So retail is never going to be the same after this pandemic. Technology is also important for business, and the momentum we're seeing now, we never saw that before at BDC. 40% of Canadian entrepreneurs are saying they're going to invest more in technology in the next 3 years. And there's 3 reasons for that. The first one is they want to improve their efficiency. They want to use technology to reduce their costs, to improve their processes, to improve their productivity. Second, they want to have a better presence online. They are seeing that consumers are looking to buy more online in the future. So Canadian entrepreneurs want to improve the client experience online. And those who are not present online, they want to be there as well. They see the benefits of it. Finally, they want to focus on investing in technology to favor teleworking. Again, at the end of this pandemic, the world is going to be different. More people are going to work from home. So this is a very good news for the economy, because our past research is showing that businesses who are investing in technology, they perform better than others. They have higher growth revenue and also higher profit growth. So this is actually a good turn for the Canadian economy. So in conclusion, the recovery in Canada is well underway. The initial recovery has been strong, stronger than we expected at the beginning, and even stronger than other developed economies. However, how we control the COVID-19 is going to have a big impact on the rest of the recovery. Something that the pandemic has changed is technology adoption. Technology adoption is accelerating with consumer and also with businesses. And this is a great news, because this is actually the future of this country.
Thank you, Pierre. Just a couple of quick follow-up questions for you too, if you don't mind. I'd like to return to one of your final slides there. You were talking about the impact of companies adopting technology, and that was a key point that Mary made a couple of moments ago too. So maybe you could just expand on that for us. Do you think this will be a driving force in economic growth moving forward?
Yes, our past research are showing that companies who are adopting technology more than others, they perform better. They perform better in terms of revenue growth and also profit growth. What we realized during the pandemic is people who are using more technology had a huge difference. For example, be present online made a huge difference for companies during the pandemic. The good news is the pandemic has really changed the game. This created a momentum in terms of investing in technology. More and more Canadian companies realize that investing in technology is going to make them more efficient, more profitable. So right now, there's a momentum that we haven't seen before.
Pierre, there is, of course, right now a lot of negativity around our economy, but what would you say gives you the most optimism about our future here in Canada?
Well, actually, there's 2 points. The first one, the initial recovery in Canada has been quite strong, stronger than expected, so we should realize that. For example, today, we are at 96% of the level of job than in February, compared to only 93% in the United States. So that makes me confident about the rest of the recovery. The second point is companies are investing in technology, and this is important. It's going to make the economy more competitive in the future. Like I said, technology is the future. The fact that we have created a momentum over the last few months to invest more in technology, that makes me more optimistic about the future.
Pierre, thank you. We appreciate it. Our next guest, of course, is a fixture at Economic Outlook for his insights and his intriguing slides, and let's be honest, usually his cool shirts and ties as well. Senior Vice President and Chief Economist for ATB Financial, Todd Hirsch, needs no introduction, but first, a very quick message from our key sponsor, ATB.
Alberta is getting back to work, and businesses have questions. How do we look after our people and the business? In what ways have my customers' needs changed? How do we manage our new financial situation? And how will this new reality affect our sales? ATB was built to tackle questions like these. ATB was built to help Albertans. Visit atb.com.
Well, thank you very much to Calgary Economic Development for inviting me to be part, once again, of their Fall Economic Outlook. Under these unusual circumstances, of course, but it is always great to be back with Calgary Economic Development and what has become a very wonderful traditional event for the city. The title of my presentation, What If It's Easier Than We Think? Alberta's Evolving Economy in a COVID World. Now that title is meant to be a bit provocative, and it's meant to raise your eyebrows a little bit. And I want you to kind of stick with me on that title. I'm going to talk in the first half of my presentation about our current outlook for Alberta, and I'm going to touch on a few key sectors. And then I'm going to shift gears and get back to this title, What If It's Easier Than We Think? So let's dive first of all into our key economic outlook. I'm not going to go too deep into the numbers. I'm just going to share a couple of the high-level indicators with you. The GDP, we are expecting a contraction of Alberta's economy of 7.1% this year. Now that is a bit of a startling number, and suffice to say it is the largest contraction that any of us have seen in the province. You really would have to go all the way back to the 1930s to find anything comparable, at least in terms of a yearly contraction. And the data that were collected back in the 30s, not really comparable to today. So for us living in the 21st century, this is the deepest contraction this province has ever seen. However, in 2021, which is now only a few weeks away, we are expecting a modest rebound of about 3.3%. Now, I always caution us, let's not get too caught up in, these tenths of percentage points, the idea that we can, forecast to that degree of specificity how the economy is going to change. But 3.3% in an average year for Alberta, that wouldn't be too bad at all. But in this case, you have to go all the way back to 2014 to find growth anywhere close to that. Of course, 2015, 2016, 2 years of contraction, about 3.5% in each year. 2017, 2018, we saw the start of a modest rebound, but it kind of petered out in 2019 when we saw another very modest recession contraction that year. 2020, we were expected to be on track to post a good year of growth. Obviously, that isn't happening because of COVID. But 2021, we do expect that our economy will post a modest rebound of about 3.3%. Now, that is contingent on a couple of things falling into place. One is that we don't see another lockdown or a shutdown of the economy. And as we just heard the previous economist talk about that, for the Canadian economy, it's the same in Alberta. If we are to see another lockdown, even a partial lockdown of the economy, that could jeopardize that modest rebound that we're expecting next year. It's also contingent on oil prices hanging out about where they're at, which, to be honest, is a pretty soft level. That West Texas Intermediate, that benchmark price, hanging around $40 US a barrel, where it's been pretty consistently for the last several months. That is about $10 less than what it was pre-COVID, and it does present a pretty challenging price environment for our energy sector. However, for that rebound of 3.3% next year, we are going to have to see those oil prices hanging around where they're at, perhaps even a little bit stronger. If we are to see another plunge in oil prices, for whatever reason, that again would jeopardize that growth forecast for 2021. Very briefly, a couple key sectors. Let's talk about the energy sector, because as I always say, that is the dog that wags an awful lot of tails in this province, both directly and indirectly. And as I was just mentioning, with oil hanging around $40 for that West Texas price, the US benchmark price, the energy sector in Alberta, I would describe it as stable but not growing. And that puts our energy sector in a different role. It used to be the growth engine of our province, going back to the early part of the last decade, of 2010 to 2014. Now it is a backbone. It's no longer a growth engine, it's a backbone. It's a very distinct change in role for our energy sector. But of course, a backbone, you want to protect the backbone, you want to make sure it's in good shape. However, the growth engine is going to come from other sectors. We heard Mary talk a lot about the digital economy, the tech sector. We think that is going to be a primary growth sector in 2021 and beyond. And other sectors as well. We believe agriculture and agri-foods, sort of diversifying away from our traditional agriculture, the beef, the wheat, the canola. We think that will be stable, but roughly 30% of our farm cash receipts in Alberta come from sectors or come from crops and livestock outside of those traditional three. This is where we think we're going to see more growth. And also agri-foods. So now we're talking food and beverage processing. We think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there as well. Another sector of the economy that I think we're going to see some, related a little bit to the technology sector, is healthcare and healthcare technologies. We think Alberta, Calgary particularly, is very nicely positioned to grow in healthcare technologies and services around that. So those are three sectors where we think we are going to see some growth returning in 2021. But we have to be realistic. Those three sectors, even taken together, are still dwarfed by our energy sector. And with our energy sector as a backbone, but not a growth engine, that is going to take considerable amount of growth from those other sectors, even to get us to 3.3% growth. But we do think that is where it's going to be. The other numbers that I want to share with you are unemployment rate in Alberta. We're expecting average unemployment this year of 11.4%. That's almost triple where it was back in 2014, when it was more like a 4.5%. And it's even double from where it was back in 2017, 2018. So we are seeing real challenges on that unemployment side. Obviously, with COVID, so many businesses have been forced to lay people off. 2021, even though we are expecting some growth to come back to the economy, we're not expecting the unemployment rate in Alberta to fall back into single digits. That might take until 2023 or maybe even longer. The challenge there is that even though we are expecting some growth to come back, there is a lot of unabsorbed labor in that labor market right now. These are people who are maybe underemployed, they're working too few hours, or they're maybe working in an industry that is not what they've been trained to work in. And it also does not count those workers that are discouraged. They work in industries where they've maybe just given up looking for work because they know at the moment there aren't any opportunities. So we've got a lot of unabsorbed workers in the labor market that have to be pulled back in before we see that unemployment rate fall back into the single-digit territory. So with some of those numbers and some of those sectors out of the way, I now want to get back to the title of the presentation. What if it's easier than we think? And that is evolving in a new economy. Now, I want to be very, very clear. When I say what if it's easier than we think, I do not for a minute want to ignore how difficult this economy has been for individuals. So many people that are out of work, so many businesses that have gone out of business, people have lost their businesses. This has been an extraordinarily difficult time for Albertans, for Calgarians, and I don't for a minute negate that. We recognize that. What I mean by when I say, what if it's easier than I think, or than we think, what if evolving actually takes place in a way that isn't actually as difficult as we might think it is. I have three stories that I want to share with you to describe that point about what if it's easier than we think. The first story I want to share, my partner and I last year, we took a trip. For me, it was a trip of a lifetime. We went to Australia in September and October of 2019. Now, as most of you are aware, Australia is a country, a beautiful country, but one that is full of dangerous creatures. There are sharks, there are spiders under every rock, there are crocodiles, there are jellyfish, there are snakes that will kill you. It's probably the most dangerous place when you think of the wildlife in Australia. But it wasn't the sharks or the jellyfish or the spiders I was afraid of. I was terrified, however, of one thing in Australia, and that is this: driving on the left side of the road. My partner and I, it was a 2.5-week road trip through Australia, so we were renting a vehicle and driving. But I was actually very anxious about driving on the left side of the road. I could not work out in my head how this is going to be possible. I thought it was going to be like trying to operate a vehicle the same way I would try to write with my left hand, because I'm right-handed. And I thought, boy, if my driving is as good or as bad as my left-hand penmanship, everyone's in a lot of trouble. So I was really nervous about this driving on the left side of the road. Now, I suppose I could have taken a few actions beforehand. I could have petitioned the Australian government, the state government of Queensland, which is where we were. I could have asked them if they could reverse the driving lanes for my 2.5-week vacation. Obviously, that isn't practical. I could have, well, in Australia, I could have just driven on the right side of the road, because that's what I'm used to, avoiding all the oncoming traffic. That, of course, is not a practical solution. My third option turns out to be the least practical or realistic of all, and that is I could have just asked my partner to do all 2,500 kilometers of driving on that trip. He looked at me and he said, if you think I'm doing all the driving, you got to rethink that. So at some point, I actually had to take the wheel. But when I did take the wheel, something incredible happened, and that is I found out it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. As human beings, we are amazingly adaptable when we need to be. Now, to be clear, when driving on the left side of the road in Australia, I don't want to imply that it was the same as driving at home. It wasn't. It required all of my concentration. I had to focus 100% of the time. In fact, in some ways, I was probably a safer driver in Australia than here at home because, especially highway driving, doesn't actually require all your attention all the time. It's that 1% of the time when you do need to be aware, that's when accidents happen. In Australia, I was concentrating, focused on driving 100% of the time, and as a result, I actually made it okay. It was not as hard as I thought it was going to be adapting to the new system. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, okay, Todd, that's nice to hear about your holiday, but let's talk about the economy. Is there perhaps an example in modern times of an economy where we see a shutdown or a partial shutdown of the economy? And what learnings might we have coming out of that? There is actually a really great example. 1973 and 1974 in the United Kingdom, they were hit with an energy crisis. Now, some of you might remember this was a global energy crisis stemming largely from the OPEC countries curtailing oil production, which caused a petroleum shortage around the world. And at the same time, the British economy was hit with a coal miners' strike. In the British economy at the time, electricity was fueled almost entirely by coal, so it was this double whammy, and it threw the British economy into a crisis. Well, the Prime Minister at the time responded with this: a 3-day work week. It was mandated that every office, every factory, every shop in the United Kingdom go from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, a reduction of 40% of work time. On top of that, we did see the coal miners' strike, but even though we did see a curtailment, 40% fewer hours, you would think in that quarter of 1974, the Q1, that we actually would see a 40% drop in production. But in fact, we saw only a 10% drop in production. The economy did shrink, but it did not shrink nearly as much as what one would think given a 40% reduction in the work week. It contracted by only about 10%. And why is that? Well, in fact, British workers were more adaptable than maybe they thought they were. In those 3 days of work time they had, they changed their work patterns. They focused on the things they needed to get done. In fact, they became more productive in those 3 days that they had because they knew that they had to adapt to that. They had to get that work done. So we do see a contraction in the economy of 10%, but not nearly the contraction that you would think, given that everyone was working 40% fewer hours. The third and final story I want to share with you brings us back to Canada, and an example in more recent times of what happened in the bar and pub industry in the first decade of the 21st century. This little graph here, and this is the only graph I'm going to share with you, goes from June 2000 to June 2010, the first 10 years of the century. And you can see over the first half of that decade, bar and pub receipts, they climbed pretty steadily up until the middle of June 2000, or to the middle of 2005. And after that point, you see a big drop and a period of wild volatility. Month by month, bar and pub receipts are spiking up and spiking down. And for about 3 years, there's all of this disruption and volatility in bar and pub receipts. Now, some of you might already be guessing what was going on at that time between 2005 and 2008 that would create this sort of volatility. Well, in fact, there was something very specific going on. Between 2005 and 2008, Canadian cities and provinces, in a staggered way, they were bringing in no smoking bylaws into the bars and pubs. And a lot of you might remember the controversy and the conversations that were going on. Even here in Calgary. Calgary was one of the latter cities to bring it in 2008, I think it was. And I remember at the time listening to bar owners and pub operators thinking, you know, if you bring in to city council, if you bring in these no smoking bylaws, my bar is going to go out of business. Because if people can't smoke in the bar, they're not going to come to the bar. And in fact, what you see is for a short period of time, there were drops in revenue, followed by an almost equal increase in revenue as people adapted. The smokers got used to the idea of it. They stayed away for a while, but when they did come back, they recognized, well, we just have to adapt. We have to go outside and stand on the street if we want to smoke. But by and large, revenue receipts did recover, at least partially. Now, this little graph highlights two things. One is that we are, in fact, more adaptable than we think we are. Industries that think they are going to get hit by a massive change in policy and maybe go out of business find, in fact, that their clients and customers do respond, they adapt, and they come back. But the other thing that is important to note is that while there was a rebound, over the course of the decade, bar and pub receipts, they ended that decade slightly lower than when they started. So it isn't quite true to say that the no smoking bylaw had no impact. It did have a negative impact. It's just the impact was not nearly as severe and negative as maybe what we thought. I'm going to end my presentation on this quotation here, and I love this. If you're looking for a good positive book, maybe to read over the COVID winter we're moving into, I would recommend Humankind, A Hopeful History. But this quote, there's a failure to recognize that not only problems, but also solutions can grow exponentially. I love this quote because it doesn't ignore the problems. The problems are real. We have to face them. We don't for a minute imagine that they don't exist. But at the same time, it recognizes we have to focus on the solutions, which can also grow exponentially. This is a challenging year, a challenging time for our city and for our province. People have lost jobs. Businesses have gone out of business. But we are now looking for solutions. The problems are there, but the solutions, as we've heard from Mary, we're going to hear from Minister Nenshi, or Mayor Nenshi, we heard from Minister Schweitzer, the solutions can also grow exponentially, and that is where we need to focus. With that, I want to thank you very much. I do want to just let everyone know, if you're looking for some good podcasts over the winter, check out The Future Of. This is a podcast we've started at ATB Financial that I host. You can go to your app where you get your favorite podcasts and type in The Future Of and tune in there. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Please come have a seat. Every time you speak, Todd, I scribbled down so many notes and then I have to decipher them all. But let's talk a little bit about, you were talking about adapting to our new reality, and that's the key to future prosperity. What makes you so positive we can do it?
Well, I've lived in Calgary for 31 years. I often talk about I moved here accidentally. I'm from Edmonton originally. I had a summer job here. I was going out east to do grad school. For a lot of reasons, I ended up staying here. But for 31 years, this city has provided me with a lot of things, but the key is opportunity. This is not the first recession that I've seen in 31 years. 2020, of course, is the most severe, but what makes me confident is that this is a city of adapters. You know, I know we're very focused right now on what we've lost and trying to get back to the economy that we used to be. But ultimately, this city was built by people that defied the odds. And I think that is going to continue. That's why I'm so hopeful about Calgary and its ability to adapt.
Pierre talked a little bit about how the whole sort of retail front has changed and how many more people are shopping online. And it makes me think of the little mom and pop businesses maybe in Inglewood or, you know, places downtown that are just clinging on, and they maybe don't have the extra money to be adapting their websites, putting their products online. What do you say to them now as we're heading into the winter to try to get them to think about being more adaptable and changing how they do things to survive through this?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and it leads me to think, one of the things that I'm most passionate about is this idea of we all need to be shopping locally and supporting those local businesses. More than ever in my career now, I recognize the importance of shopping and supporting locally. But what I would tell those shop owners, the main advantage they have over the big, giant corporations is their ability to pivot. They often, can make changes on the fly. Right now I'm working on a book which is a follow-up to the Spiders in Space book, which came out in 2017. It's called Spiders in COVID Space. More stories of adapting to change. Now, none of this is to say it's easy for businesses, especially small businesses. I don't want to imply it's easy for them to change. This is hard work. You have to be passionate. You have to be driven. But there are possible ways to pivot. And for some businesses that, we have to be realistic, they may not be viable. I would ask that business operator, what is the pivot in your life? It may not be this business that is the future for you, but you might have to pivot in your life to something new. Maybe a new kind of business, maybe a new way to provide. Those sorts of things are also pivots. Just because a business closes, as sad as that is, it doesn't mean for that individual, that's the end of the line. There is a new story for that individual as they pivot to something new.
Flexibility is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Todd, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you
Always
so much.
appreciate it. All right. Well, now we will hear from a man, of course, who needs no introduction again, Mayor Naheed Nenshi. But first, a quick glimpse at what's happening in the life sciences sector in Calgary.
A lot of Calgary's greatest assets are worn in the sleeve of the city. I mean, you can't miss the scenery, the hospitality, or the hard work. But something we're most proud of isn't worn on our sleeves. It's our dedication to the life sciences. Calgary's home to many of the world's best researchers and innovators. There's over 100 life science companies in the city, with more just getting started. So if you're a bright mind or a bright company, if your work matters to you and you want to take it further, well then we've got just the place. Be part of the energy.
Well, my $1 million entrepreneurial idea is the mask that doubles as a pocket square. It is great to be here, sort of, with all of you today. This is weird. It's very weird. So thank you, Tara, for doing this as you do every year. Thank you, Mary and Pierre and Todd, for bringing us your great insights. This year I get to play clean up a little bit and spend some time with you towards the end of the event, just reflecting a little bit on what we've heard. Okay, so this is weird. We're standing here in the beautiful Calgary Film Centre, which is not bustling with activity for films that are being filmed here in Calgary at the moment, but will be soon. We're not standing in front of 1,000 of you at the TELUS Convention Centre. The TELUS Convention Centre, another place that is not bustling with activity. But we're still having this conversation. We're still having this dialogue. Now, a year ago, and the year before that, and the year before that, I spoke to you about cautious optimism. I spoke to you about how, regardless of the trough that we found ourselves in, we are still in the very best place to live in the Western Hemisphere. Ask the Economist. In the world, ask me. This is, I think, my 11th time at one of these economic outlooks. I celebrated my 10th anniversary as your mayor this week, if you can believe it. By the way, as part of that, instead of throwing a big party, we are launching a series of stories. That's my gift to Calgary for the 10th anniversary, is people's stories. They're stories of Calgarians talking about their 10 years. You can find them at calgarymayor.ca or on Twitter or Facebook under my name. The art of the extraordinary local artist Sam Hester is featured. They're very cool. And today's story is a story about economic transformation. And it's about how we've been stewarding the economy of Calgary through these years. All of that said, if you had told me a year ago when I stood on this stage and made fun of Mary, as I always do, and talked about cautious optimism, how our unemployment rate was moving in the right direction, how I was thinking about when we would get back to those 2014 levels, and if you had told me then, you know, Mayor, a year from now, you're going to be standing in an empty sound stage, and you're going to be talking about how unemployment has nearly doubled in a year, in the context of a giant global pandemic and recession, I'm not sure what I would have thought. I probably would have decided the last year of being the mayor might not be the most fun ever. But here we are. We're dealing with a global public health pandemic. We're dealing with our primary role, which is to keep people safe and keep people happy and alive in the city. And we're dealing with that, as you've heard throughout this afternoon, in the context of a number of other crises. We've got a public health crisis. We have a mental health and addictions crisis. It was there before, but it has been exacerbated by the pandemic. We're dealing with perhaps not a crisis, but an opportunity to finally have long-deferred conversations about the role of our community and the role of our society and who we're building that society for. Conversations about how we need to somehow reconcile the fact that we are proud and celebrate this inclusive, diverse, pluralistic place we've built, but that we now have to move from that pride into active anti-racism, into understanding that Black and Indigenous people of color in our community are not afforded the same opportunities as others are. And it's our job to make sure that that changes. And of course, those three things are happening in the backdrop of what we've been talking about today, which is an extraordinary economic crisis, a global economic crisis. And as Mary very nicely pointed out, usually I speak before her, but today she got to use all my best lines. But as Mary nicely pointed out, we can think of that economic crisis in a number of different ways in terms of how it impacts the energy sector, in terms of how it impacts street front retail in our community, small businesses, and how we move forward together on thinking about how to handle all of this all at once. There's one thing I want to say up front, which is there are a few people out there in the community who provide, not very many, but a few, who provide feedback that says, listen, the economic crisis is the result of the public health precautions that government have taken. I have to tell you, I fully reject that point of view. I could not disagree with it more. Sometimes people say to me, why didn't we just be like Sweden? Keep everything open, everything was fine. And of course, that belies the fact that Sweden's death rate is much, much higher than Canada's, that far more people died in Sweden, a small country of 10 million people, than died in any of their immediate neighbors. But it also belies the fact that Sweden's second quarter GDP contraction was 8.6%. It's more than Alberta. So not only do you have a public health failure, you also have an economic failure. And so fundamentally, we've got to be able to have very serious conversations about what we do in our community, what we value, and how we move forward. I want to say a few words about retail businesses, about storefronts and street front retail as we've seen challenges throughout this community, restaurants, bars, retail businesses. Certainly, this is a very serious concern. We know that businesses that close in a crisis find it difficult to open again. We learned this in 2013 during the flooding, when we knew that 40% of businesses on average that close never open again. And it was our job to make sure that didn't happen after the floods in Calgary. And in fact, we kept that number to below 5%. But the floods, well, they started on Thursday and the water was receding by Saturday. We're into our 9th month of this global pandemic. And I can't tell you when the end is. I don't have a crystal ball that is as good as Todd's or Pierre's. But I can tell you that your city government has taken this very, very seriously. And within our limited authorities, we've done what we can to assist these local and small businesses in terms of deferring payments and fees, in terms of making it easier for restaurants to expand their capacity and moving onto patios, and a whole variety of other things we've done through our business and local economy team at the city, led by the marvelous Sonia Sharp, really to help businesses make it through this rough patch. And we've had partners in doing that. We've had partners in the federal and provincial governments helping think about the real issues that are making it difficult for businesses, whether that's the emergency wage subsidy or the old and the new rent relief programs, and how we manage to get people through this. But it's not enough to just get through this. The critical thing we have to think about right now is that, Minister Schweitzer used the D word. I'm going to use the other dirty word that sometimes governments in Alberta don't like to use, which is the T word, transition. What is this economy going to look like? Where is it going? How can we help it get to those places? Because if you are me, then in everything you've heard today, the most terrifying thing you saw was the fourth number on Todd Hirsch's slide. And that fourth number was his unemployment projections for next year. That even though the GDP will go from -7 to +3, your lips to God's ears, Todd, the unemployment rate isn't going to move very much. We may be in a situation of a jobless recovery. And that is really challenging because we have to be focused entirely on jobs in our community and how we create those jobs. And there are ways to do that in the short term, and I applaud the federal and provincial governments for the work they've done on infrastructure spending. We're going to get that money to work right away. We're going to be spending money on things like maintenance of affordable housing, which is indoor work that can continue through the winter, but that also lends people a sense of dignity in their lives and a sense of an opportunity from which they can improve their lives, a trajectory that can move forward. We're going to be building roads and bridges, and of course we're about to start the largest public works project in Alberta's history, the Green Line, which we anticipate will create 20,000 construction-related jobs over its time. This stuff matters. But putting in the building blocks for what happens next matters. And that's really what we have been talking about a lot this afternoon. When we think about that economic development strategy, Calgary in the new economy, Mary pays me a commission every single time I say that, so I'm glad I got it in a few minutes into the speech. But when we think about Calgary in the new economy, it's based on four things: talent, innovation, place, and business environment. And fundamentally, those are the four things that are the building blocks to building this greater economy we're talking about. You've heard a lot today about talent. You've heard a lot about attracting and retraining and making sure that people are able to access those great jobs that are still being unfilled through Calgary, even in this economy. I've talked a lot over the years about place, about the importance of being able to build an extraordinary place to live where people want to invest, where people want to grow. I remember when we made the investment in Finger Food, they said there is nowhere in the world that offers a better place to grow this kind of tech business than Calgary. It's an extraordinary statement, and that's something that we got to live up to every single day. And whether that's about investing in public space, whether it's about investing in public arts, whether it is about creating extraordinary experiences for people, all of that plays into that. When we think about, so that's talent and place. When we think about business environment, I'll remind you that a CD House study last year looked at the cost of doing business across 50 urban areas across North America, Canada, and the United States, I should say. They didn't go to Mexico. Calgary ranked #1 in terms of the lowest cost of doing business. So our business environment is very strong, which takes us to the fourth one, which is innovation. And innovation really is about exactly what Todd was saying. At least I think this is what he meant when he was talking about learning to drive on the left. What he was saying, I think, and hopefully I got it right, if not, that's how I interpreted it, and it's still good. But what he was saying was we have to be able to be willing to let go. We have to be willing to be able to embrace our fears and embrace change and let all those incredibly innovative people and huge, brilliant minds in this city continue to do the work that they do every single day. So what I would suggest to you is that right now, the easiest thing in the world is for us to say, this is awful. The easiest thing in the world is for us to sit back and look at how horrible things are and say, woe is me. That's human. Every single one of us has lost something in these last few months. And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to have grief. It's okay to have a sense of loss for what could have been. But ultimately, our job now is to get beyond that. Our job now is to ask ourselves, what do we love about being here? What is extraordinary about being here in this place? Why do I want to raise my kids here? Why do I want to invest here? Why do I want to make this the place for generations of my family and of my business? And there are so many good reasons. And those reasons don't come from extraordinary governments or great mayors or incredible policy. That's part of it. But those reasons come from the extraordinary people who find themselves in this place. People who have been gathering on the confluence of these two rivers for thousands of years. They've been coming here to hunt and to fish and to trade and to build wealth, to live and to love and to dream and to dance and to fight sometimes. Sounds like my last city council meeting, except for the live, love, and dance parts. But ultimately, in order to engage in that very real act of building community together. So yes, I'm super happy to have a partner in the government of Alberta who is saying all the right things about partnering with us on economic development. That stuff really matters, and I really applaud Minister Schweitzer in his new role coming forward with some of the great things that he had to say today. Yes, we need a partner in the government of Canada, understanding that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to invest in the economy of the West to help us recreate this incredible economic engine without which Canada doesn't work. But ultimately, so much of it is about every single one of us. We need to shop local. We need to support startups. And as I say this every year, we need to go to our supply chain departments, our purchasing and procurement departments, and say, how can we be the first customer for a new Calgary entrepreneur to help them grow, rather than being risk averse and saying, we won't buy from you unless you have this record? How can we look at our own employees as sources of wealth creation in our own community? How can we ensure that we're investing our time, our talents, our minds into building the economy here? So 10 years ago, yesterday, I stood in a hot, sweaty basement on McLeod Trail, and I talked about my dreams for what this city could be. And what I remember the most about that, thanks Facebook Memories for reminding me of all of this, was not what I said. It was how Calgarians responded and reacted and built us up. It was about that extraordinary moment where anything was possible, where we knew that we were on the cusp of creating something incredible. It has been my honor and my privilege to get to go to work every single day for the last 10 years to fulfill that promise of our community, that promise of this extraordinary place. And I'll remind you what I said at my very first economic outlook. I said the real strength of this place is not the fact that there are carbon atoms in the ground nearby. The real strength of this place is that we figured out something that too few people in the world have figured out. That it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who your daddy was. It doesn't matter how you worship or whom you love. What matters is that you're here. What matters is that you belong here in this place of safety, opportunity, and prosperity for everyone. That every single person lucky enough to share this land, every single person has the chance right here, right now, to live a great Canadian life. That's the promise of this place. That's what I've been humbled to do with you every single day for the last 10 years, and I hope that's something that we will reinvigorate and re-energize ourselves and recommit ourselves to fighting for every single day. Thank you for the last 10 years. Thank you for this opportunity. Let's rebuild better.
Thank you, Mayor Nenshi. Please have a seat. I'd love to just have a couple of moments of your time. Happy anniversary, happy 10th anniversary. So tell me a little bit more about the investments that the city is making to ensure that Calgary is the top choice for entrepreneurs and for talent.
Sure. So we'll start with some of the stuff that we're doing really with the storefront, street front things, right? We've invested quite a bit just in the last 8 months in terms of reducing or waiving fees, allowing people lesser penalties if they just don't have the cash flow to pay their taxes, cutting red tape for different kinds of businesses. That's sort of immediate reaction stuff. The second issue is around fixing some of the systemic problems we have with taxation. The property tax is the worst possible way of taxing business. And so within the legislative constraints we have, which are very, very tight, we've done what we can to ease the impact of the economic downturn on businesses outside of downtown Calgary. Businesses in downtown Calgary have seen 70–80% tax reduction, but that's been made up for by huge increases for businesses outside. So we've spent nearly $750 million, over $700 million in tax relief for these businesses over time, which was the right thing to do, though we're running out of money. This coming year, businesses that are big warehouses in the industrial sector are looking at a pretty big tax increase, and we've got to figure out how to mitigate or how to manage that as well. And then the work of Mary and her colleagues at Calgary Economic Development is critical. And one of the important pieces there, which Mary talked about, was our investment in the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. It's a $100 million investment to allow us to participate in the growth of companies like Adibotics that we've heard about earlier today. And we've really used it to date to help companies get past a growth hurdle quite successfully. Now, in the last year or so, we've been using that fund to make what we're calling ecosystem investments. Investments in things like the new SAIT School of Digital Technology, to really, or the University of Calgary Life Sciences Hub, to really help us build the talent pool that we need to grow. You know, Calgary in the New Economy outlined 7 industries that we think are growth potential industries. The first is energy in all its forms, clean, green, renewable, travel and logistics, transportation, and tourism, agri-food and agribusiness, life sciences, financial services, and the creative industries. I've said it so many times, I know all 7 of them by heart. And using technology as an enabler across all of those. So what OSIF and CED have been able to do is find the things that are preventing those industries from growing and making very strategic investments to help them grow, and we'll continue to do that work as well. The real power here, though, of course, is the provincial and federal governments. We are small potatoes in terms of the money we've got. But Enterprise Alberta, Invest Alberta can really be great partners with the City of Calgary. There are muscles we haven't always had to use because the economy here has always been doing so well. But we need to exercise those muscles and do some work together.
Just quickly, one last question. We are sitting and have been sitting for the last couple of years at more than 25% vacancy rate in some of those downtown towers. Calgary is working so hard to diversify and attract all of these new businesses. How do we get them downtown? How do we get them to rent some of that space?
It's such an important question because it's required for a vital downtown. It's required for the small businesses downtown. It's hard to run a dry cleaner or a lunch counter if there aren't people in the building. As Mary said, we are a victim of our own success. We have the most successful downtown in terms of the concentration of jobs anywhere in North America. And so when we saw some of those jobs leave, as Mary pointed out, we actually have way more office space downtown than most cities do. So it is a challenge. And we're not going to be able to fill those downtown office spaces 100,000 square feet at a time with, you know, I'm going to go off to Silicon Valley and attract some big tenant who's going to have 10,000 jobs. We have to think of new ways of doing it. Some of it's going to require some conversion, more people living downtown or thinking about new uses for these buildings. One of the great examples is a building called the Edison, which if you're old like me, you think of as Pan-Canadian Place. I think some people think of it as Encana Place. That was a 0% occupancy building 3 or 4 years ago. It's now at 100% occupancy, and it's turned into sort of a vertical Silicon Valley incubator kind of space. It's not just about putting putting greens and dog parks indoors, but it's about really being thoughtful about different kinds of businesses that used to be priced out of downtown Calgary and thinking about how they can make a real emphasis downtown. And you're going to see more of that with the opening of the Platform Innovation Center in the East Village, and more of these smaller companies coming downtown, which will help solve the problem as well.
Okay. Nenshi, thank you for your time today. We always appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's always great to have you.
Thank you so much. Well, we are almost at the end, but we have one more very short video. We started at the beginning asking, showing you that this is Calgary, so now why Calgary?
Let me take you on a quick tour of Calgary. First thing you'll notice, the skyline. With the mountains in the background, it's good. You'll probably take a picture. As you move towards the inner city, you'll feel its culture, the varying neighborhoods. You'll see art. Something will jump out at you. Oh, I should check that out, you might say to yourself. Welcome to Calgary. The place is bustling. Yeah, see, most people are surprised when they get here. They expect something a little more, rustic.
Anyway, settle in. You've got a million different things to do, people to meet, places to see. Start with a little food maybe. Check out the culinary scene, a lot of options. Some of the best restaurants in the country are here. Feel like partying? You more of like a dive bar type, or do you want to hit the club? We could do a beer hall or billiards, live music, whatever you want, we got you. There's major events year-round, pro sports, live music. Major acts come through here constantly. There's something going on every night. If you're a morning person, maybe get up early and take in some of the great outdoors. The city's covered in pathways, the longest paved urban pathway system on the continent, in fact. It's over 1,000 kilometers, or around 620 miles if you don't speak metric. So go for a ride, hit up a park. Go fishing right downtown if that's more your thing. The inner city's got beautiful outdoor spots, and then there's like the outdoors. Head west about an hour, and you'll find yourself right here. Yeah, remember to breathe. See, Calgary's got the unique pleasure of being a major metropolitan city while also being a stunning outdoor destination. All the arts, culture, events, dining, and nightlife surrounded in the most beautiful, most fun mountain and park areas that ever graced your eyes. And look, I don't know exactly what you're looking for or what your idea of a good time is, but what I do know is that you will find it right here in Calgary. Try us. Be part of the energy.
That's why Calgary. Wow, that is gorgeous. Well, that wraps it up for another year. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today for a unique and informative Economic Outlook 2021. We look forward to seeing you at the Startup Calgary's virtual launch party. That's November 17th. And hopefully we will be able to see you face to face once again for next year's Economic Outlook. Thanks again and have a super afternoon.